Hi everyone, welcome to another great edition of AND. It's brilliant to have your company. My name's Donna Stevenson and I am always your host for these great conversations. We are part of a family here at AND. We are a coalition of lots of different organisations that join together to create this safe space for our adult neurodivergent community. And we're always so lucky to be joined by a great expert guest along the way. And tonight is no exception. But before I introduce this wonderful person, I will talk through what our AND coalition is. So we are the Adult Network, Neurodiversity and Dyslexia. And we are made up of Neurobox, and I'm of course part of the Neurobox family, Succeed with Dyslexia, and they do some great work. And I have been part of that family, and so is our guest this evening. So we've got that mutual love in common. We also have, as part of the AND family, the Adult Dyslexia Centre. And we are joined this evening, as we often are, by wonderful Sue Floor MBE, who is the manager there. Hello, Sue.
Oh, hi. Would you like
Hi.
me to say a few words about us? Yeah?
Yes, please,
Okay.
Sue, set the scene.
Yeah, we're the one-stop shop for adults but with dyslexia, but we also help parents or anybody, carers who have children. We're there for everybody. We do training, we do assessments. Our main function is to run our helpline and give advice and support to anyone that needs it. Um, um, one of the main things that we do is run a course for parents to understand dyslexia, and that's coming up very soon. Anyway, we're there for everything. Anything that's dyslexic, we're there.
Yeah, thank you,
Okay.
Sue.
Yeah.
And that course that you've just mentioned, am I right in thinking, is that in the new year?
Yes, just
Yeah.
the beginning of January,
Oh, great.
3 sessions in the evening for anyone who wants to understand dyslexia better. Yeah.
Yeah, aimed at parents
Yeah.
and carers.
Thanks.
And if people want to find out more, go to your
Yeah.
website
Just get
again.
in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Thank
perfect.
you.
And
Yeah.
we've got the contact details at the end as well
Yeah.
for folks to reach
Thanks.
out. So thank you. So that's all the great work that goes on over at the ADC. We
Yeah.
have the Hampshire Dyslexia Association as part of our family as well. Again, very like ADC, they do lots of fantastic work with families, with adults. They provide
Mm.
training, raising awareness. They often get involved in conferences as well. So again, great work. We've got their contact details at the end of our session today, as always. Again, another part of the coalition is the Yorkshire Rose Dyslexia Association. Again, fantastic work with families, with children, with adults, raising awareness. They often have a festival every year. So as we look to 2026, their festival no doubt will be coming along again in the summertime. Again, their contact details will be at the end of our chat today. We've got the Helen Arkell Dyslexia Charity, fantastic organisation. They do lots of great work to support the community. Very well known for assessments and tuition and so on. They do have a bursary fund. Again, check out their details, everyone. It will be at the end of our chat this evening. And last but certainly not least, we have the Dyslexia Association. They are based in Nottinghamshire, but they work across England and Wales as well. And again, very similar pattern, raising awareness, training, working with adults, with children and families and so on. And again, their contact details will be at the end of our conversation this evening. So let me stop sharing as we start to think about what this conversation tonight is about. And I am joined by the one, the only, Darren Clark. Darren, it's so great to have you with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining, and what you guys do in raising awareness, and everything that you do is just phenomenal. So thank you for allowing me to be a guest.
Well, thank you, because I'm really excited to speak with you. I've known you for quite some time, and those in our community know the great work, the caring, the passion, the empathy that you bring with you. I'm going to give you a very brief introduction, but you know, your resume is a mile long. You are Awesome, truly, truly awesome. But I'm going to have a go in just a few short sentences. You are an international keynote speaker, entrepreneur. You talk about your dyslexia, ADHD, so you are a true advocate in the space, Darren. And a lot of us will know you as well from Neurodiversity Stories, because you are the creator of that, the host. You've got some amazing guests. So again, please do check that out, everybody. But that's kind of a little bit about who Darren is. And as we get chatting this evening, we'll go into more detail, no doubt, about his journey. As I say, Darren is an advocate. We talk so much about the lived experience now, and this is kind of one of his great areas of passion and empathy, is that lived experience. So to set the scene for us then, Darren, can you please share your journey with neurodiversity?
Absolutely. So my journey kind of stems right the way back. If we kind of went to kind of my school age, I kind of knew. You hear people sharing their stories and saying, "I knew I was different. I knew there was something different about me in the way that I learned." And actually, primary school. So so primary school for me was really kind of a great period of time for my life, because I enjoyed the lessons. I enjoyed the camaraderie. There wasn't, I guess, because there wasn't that much. That many tests, but I always remember the pinnacle moment of I think it's kind of like the pre-test you have to do before you go off to secondary school, so like big school. And I always remember that moment. It sticks with me now, of kind of how I felt that I was suddenly given this test to do, and I just really struggled. And I think that was kind of my understanding of how I saw the world and how things were different, and then that kind of propelled me then to go into secondary school. The problem was, when I went into secondary school, the isolation side of it and the separation side of it is something that I guess has kind of stayed with me for forever. And this is probably why I do the work that I do, is because I always remember the first day I went to secondary school, I walked to school with everyone, all of my friends, and it was just an incredible experience, because it was kind of like camaraderie. You all went in. And I always remember the first time I went into like the big assembly hall. So you go from a class where there's like 10 of you in or 11 of you in to suddenly a hall where there's hundreds of students. And I always remember the school teacher stood up in the middle of the assembly, and they gave this talk, and then they started calling out names, and they said, these are going to go to this classroom, in this classroom. And one by one, 10 by 10, everyone would get up and they would all go off to their classes. And I remember each one of my friends that were there that I grew up with just disappearing. And suddenly I'm then sat in this hall, and there's 4 of us, and we're separated. So you can just kind of see, someone over there, someone over there, someone over there, 4 students. And I'm thinking, what's going on? So from day one, I was kind of ushered up, and then we then walked past every single classroom. Well, most of the classrooms where there was kind of everyone was in. And I remember the 4 of us went and sat in this one classroom. And that was my first experience of being isolated from the classrooms, and what it was because the test that I sat, I mean, we're talking school in the 80s, I guess, 80s, 90s. The test that I sat wasn't high enough, apparently, for me to go into normal lessons. So looking back on school days, I spent pretty much five years in a porter cabin in the middle of a school playing field doing colouring in dot to dot. That was my school, and I must have had over 170, 180 different teachers throughout that period of time. And what I realised was that the teachers weren't really teachers. It was almost just making sure that we were there and we were kind of attending. So school was really difficult. Now, this was all with undiagnosed dyslexia and ADHD, and I actually didn't find out that I had dyslexia until the age of 36. So it was a very late stage. But the moment of, I guess, finding myself was the moment when I was able to leave school. So and I have a massive respect for the educational system, huge respect. And I've done so much work in the educational sector, spoken to over 1 million students over a period of time. So I have so much love and respect for it. But I feel like my education was stolen from me. And I always felt at that time, I always remember the day that we were going to be doing the GCSEs. So, and for some reason, I thought that was the time that I was going to kind of come together with my friends and sit there and have these lessons. And I remember the day walking up to the board. I don't know what it was. I just thought for some reason I was going to be entered into these exams. I didn't care about passing them. I just wanted to be included. And I always remember walking up to the board, looking at it, and sort of scouring my name, trying to desperately read the writing that was on there, find my name. And I always remember a school teacher, and I won't say the gentleman's name, but his hand on my shoulder. And he said, Clark, he said, your name won't be there. He said, we're not going to put you through the exams. It's a waste of paper. And that was the terminology that was used. So I had to sit in a classroom, so next to a hall with glass partition walls. So the screen. So everyone was in the hall having their lessons, and myself and I think 5 other students were just sat in this classroom doing colouring in dot to dot again, while everyone took the exams. The difficulty I found, Donna, around this was, and when we talk about isolation and loneliness and when you go into school, the difficulty is all you want to do is kind of just fly under the radar. You want to, because there's so many different emotions going through. It's not just the education, you're learning about yourself, the social element, how to, speak to people, how to, and the difficulty, because you're isolated in that environment all the time, when the school bell would go, you'd have to come out of this kind of hut, this porter cabin, and then try and mingle in school playing field. And you had break was 15 minutes. You had 15 minutes to try and build up some rapport with people, and then an hour at school break time. So the isolation side of it, I found really, really difficult. The journey then propelled me from leaving school. I then got my first job in a supermarket, pushing trolleys 12 hours a week. Absolutely loved it. But that took 27 application forms of different places to try and go to try and get a job, because the difficulty is, and this is where I speak to students, is that there is a huge amount of competition. You think how many tens of thousands across the UK leave at the same time, all trying to fight for certain jobs. Now, when I left school, I really struggled to read, and I really struggled to write, and that was real, that's really challenging. So filling out application forms, my mum would help me fill out these application forms, bless her. And it was that when I got my first interview, I knew once I got an interview, I'd be fine. I'd be able to talk, but it was the written side of it. And the reason why I had so many application forms denied, now I don't know if this is fact, but back then we had the paper forms that we could fill out. And I always remember in the top right-hand box, for some reason, it was always in the top right-hand box. It was where you would put your qualifications. It would where you put, you get maths, geography, humanities, tech, all these things. And because I left school with no qualifications, I didn't have anything to put in those boxes. So everything that I sent out, that bit would be blank. And it dawned on me, just as I was taking my application form in for the 27th time to different places, I remember looking at that, and whether that's kind of like the entrepreneurial side of you or the dyslexic thinking or whatever it was, and I thought it was like something spoke to me and said, that box is stopping you from getting the job. And I was thinking, and I'm not condoning this in any way, shape or form to anyone, this, right? But if I was, I thought to myself, what if I did take some exams? What would I have got? What grades would I have got? And I thought, I love drama, so I would have got a B in drama. So I basically gave myself, and I'm not again condoning this, wrote down things and some grades, and I went in and I got the interview and I got the job, 12 hours a week pushing trolleys. So I don't know if that was the case, and again, I'm not condoning lying in any way, shape, or form, but that was my entry into the world of work. And once I was able to do that, I was able to then kind of flourish and work in lots of different places. But then retail was really kind of my business education, I guess, because I really kind of flew from pushing trolleys 12 hours a week to going on the tills, to in the shops, and then I went full-time, and then I went into supervisor, and then into manager, and then ended up being a regional director looking after 56 stores with a £4 to £6 million a week budget. So but what I want to say within that side of it, because it all sounds great, like suddenly you struggle at school and then suddenly you can go into the workplace and everything's fine. There was so much struggle with these things and so much heartache, I guess, because when you're kind of undiagnosed dyslexia, as in you know there's something and you just don't know what it is, there is this block, and no matter what it does hit this confidence side of it, and you're always thinking, why did they get it and why don't I get it? So all of the presentations I had to do to try and get to the next position were all done differently. Everyone would do PowerPoints. I would literally draw pictures, and it got to a point where people would say, "Oh, well, Darren's different. Darren will do it different." And it wasn't because I wanted to do it different. It was because I didn't know how to conform and do it the way that everyone else would do it. But what I didn't realize, and what was a skill later on in life, is earlier on, I thought to myself, oh, I'm going to have to do it different. I'm going to stand out. I'm going to look silly. You know, people are going to think this. But it actually became an advantage because I was able to see things different and do things different. I stood out. So when we had to do a presentation for a store manager's position, which was, you know, there was 11 colleagues all going there and we all had to do presentations. I then had to do, I did the presentation slightly different over the other 10 candidates. And, you know, at the start, it was kind of sniggered and laughed at. You know, they were kind of like, you know, like, because I had this sort of childish drawing. But 2 slides in, they got it because I could relay it in a certain way. So that was kind of my sort of school and then into the workplace kind of journey. And then I kind of got to a point where I then got as high as I could within, you know, the retail sector. I got to a level where the next level would be I would just pretty much be in an office every day or a boardroom, and I just knew it wasn't me because I love going out and seeing people and talking to people and being creative in that way. And I think I got to a certain point where you needed some form of qualifications to get to that next, that regardless of the criteria you had and all the experience and everything, they still wanted those, that, you know, those grades. So I left that. I got to a point where I guess I was pretty much burnt out because I was working sort of 90, 95 hours a week. I was away from home. I was traveling. I was looking after 56 stores, all with this point where I was like, I'm struggling, but I don't know why. And I was thinking, is it my mental health? Is it, you know, am I depressed? Am I, you know, there's so many different things. Like, what was it? And I left that and I went into, you know, started my own business. Now, the actual realization of how the word dyslexia, like I said, I didn't even hear of it until the age of 36. And which is quite unreal now because I see it every single day and I speak to people and I guess I'm in that world. But what it was is I was working from home and I'd not long started my business, and I was listening to a news report, and it was a Points West thing. So it was on at sort of 10 past 4 on a weekday, and I started listening to this. I was sort of working and I was kind of looking, and it was on, and it was a lady, and she was talking about her florist. She was a florist and she was talking about her business. And I thought to myself, wow, this is, they're doing an interview about her business. Wouldn't it be amazing if they interviewed me about my business? And so I was kind of listening, and I thought it was just about her, you know, again, growing her business and everything else. But what I didn't realize is she kept saying, I'm dyslexic. She said, I couldn't spell the bouquets of flowers that I make, but I can tell you by smell, and I can tell you by color, and I can tell you. And it was just the most wonderful interview. And it was the first time that someone spoke to me, because she started talking about her struggles, how she sees the world and things. And I just remember kind of just stopping there and thinking, oh my goodness, like, what is this dyslexia? So you do what everyone else does. First, you work out how to spell it, and then you Google it, and then that literally then propelled me on a most incredible journey of self-discovery, I guess, because you took I think I contacted I think it was through the British Dyslexia Association, and you took this kind of mini test or something first of all, and then it came out, you know, you have dyslexia and stuff. And I was thinking, okay, so what's the next step? So I went through the whole kind of process of that. And it took you know, quite a period of time, like 6 months or something. And then I started to try and understand how, like, if I want to understand my own dyslexia, and this was, I guess, curious but selfish of me, I guess, because I wanted to know how it affects me, but I also wanted to know how it empowers people and how it affects people as well, but not just me, but how everyone else in the UK. And then it got to a point where it's, okay, so how is dyslexia perceived in different countries? You know, how is dyslexia, you know, how does it affect someone in Kenya and Ghana and in Australia? And that was when it literally just took me on when I say a wonderful journey, it was a journey of self-discovery, because I contacted the first thing I did is I contacted the British Dyslexia Association, and I think it was the CEO at the time was Helen, I think, and I just reached out and said, look, I'll be honest with you, I'm a business person. I'm not asking for anything. I'm just, can I do anything to help and support? And I did some things with them, and then I said, look, can I become an ambassador? And they said, yeah, sure. Probably the criteria was a lot more easier than it is now. I don't know, but I said, can I be an ambassador? So I started working with them, and then I thought to myself, how can I then reach other organizations and other people? So I researched, went onto the IDA, so the International Dyslexia Association's website, and if you scroll to the very bottom of that website, you have the global partners. And at the time, there was 76 organizations that are affiliated with the IDA. So I'm not sure if they pay to be partners, or they're basically just spread out across the world, and they class, they're vettified partners. So then it was myself and my partner. We put an email together to all 76 different organizations, pretty much the same as what we did with the BDA. They must have thought, this is strange. Some guy from England's just asking, but it was, I'm not selling anything. I don't want funding. I don't want you to pay for anything, but how can I help and serve and support you? And that was when Phyllis and Nancy came back from Kenya, and they wrote an email back and they said, look, we'd love you to help and support in any way. And then, but I had a lot of rejections, and I had a lot of people just not get back to me in any way, shape, or form. But the beautiful thing is, it just kind of aligned, like all the stars aligned, because the more energy I put in and the more help and how I wanted to serve, the more people I was able to connect with. So within 5 weeks of that initial email reaching out to Phyllis and Nancy, I'd flown over there, and we put on an incredible event which helped promote their school in this big kind of, like, it was like a cow shed or something. It was this big hut. It was so hot, but it was the most wonderful experience. We did some amazing stuff and raised some awareness, and that then took me to Malawi. We toured Malawi, and then we done lots of other things of stuff. So when it goes back to your original question of my journey in understanding dyslexia and neurodiversity, and I really felt that to understand me, I needed to understand other people. And once I understood other people, and this is still a journey that I'm on. So I'm learning every single day, and I love what I do, because I get to connect with incredible people like yourself to really kind of understand their strengths and how they see the world. So that's kind of my journey so far.
Darren, you are such an inspirational figure. And that picture you've painted for us is from that child through then, like you say, somebody traveling internationally with the reputation that you've got. It's just amazing. And you're such a figure of hope. And I think that's why people gravitate to you, because the positivity, the hopefulness, it just shines through when you communicate. Really interesting listening to you, because what you shared as a child of very sadly, and I hope this isn't triggering, but the isolation part, which you were very eloquent to describe, then to go from that into a community where you're so about people and that connection. Is that a part of you to think that you're almost inspired from being so isolated, that now you're such a people person, like you say, you've traveled the world? Do you think that's a connection to that child that you were, being so isolated, which is just, it breaks your heart?
Beautiful question, and you're absolutely right. The feeling of isolation, you can be isolated in the sense of, as a child, not, when you're stood in a line and they're picking everyone else first for the team, and suddenly you're stood there. You magnify that for 5 years. It's going to have some form of trauma. It's going to have some form of, disconnect, I guess, from the world. On top of that, there was a lot of things going on in where I grew up and everything, things like this. But if we just concentrate on the school side of it as well, I guess for me, being neurodivergent is that I love people, and then I love my own time as well. I have to recover. So I have strategies to be able to recover, because, sometimes that self-care side of it. But I guess I was always looking for that community to align myself with. And I guess the other thing as well is how I can add value. And that's why I use the terminology serve all the time, because I genuinely feel like, because I felt like I wasn't allowed to add value in school in any way, shape, or form. Right? There was no opportunity to add value. That element of adding value now, I feel like, oh, do I add value? Like, I question it, and that probably is a past trauma in that sense. But when you are amongst people within our community and you just feel that energy, and you just feel that sadness, and you feel that happiness, and you feel this, you absorb it, and suddenly you feel like you're home. I can't explain it. It's like nothing else. But yeah, I think it was longing for some acceptance.
Yeah, and to feel that you belong, I think, as well. That's a word we think about a lot now. And you're so honest, and I love what you say about and you are an entrepreneur, so that entrepreneur side of you, looking at that empty box, right, I've got an idea, this might get me the interview. That honesty is just worth so much, and I think it'll really resonate with a lot of adults who've been through those eras, the 70s, the 80s, even sadly the 90s, of the misunderstanding and the disrespect around neurodiversity. As you know, you were fully formed adult, so you say you're 36 when you first start to realize that you're neurodivergent. Talk me through what the impact of that was. For a lot of people, it's relief. Some people say I got angry. Some people I feel wistful about what could have been. If it's not too personal a question, what was the impact on you when you had that light bulb moment? Oh, I'm neurodivergent.
Absolutely. It was a whole mixture which seemed to go on for about a year. It was finally an understanding, like okay,
Yeah.
I understand, I get you. For a couple of days, it felt like I was like, I don't know, like, you know, like I mentioned that interview where it kind of spoke to me. There's been two moments in my life with regards to dyslexia and ADHD and neurodiversity that twice someone has spoken to me. Once in the interview where the florist was talking about that, and second with regards to the diagnosis. How I handled the interview was completely different to how the diagnosis went. The interview was kind of like, oh, wow, if she can start a business, she could do this, then I can grow it, and I can grow. And I'd already grown a very successful, retail career, very affluent, and all the other bits and all the trinkets that come with it and stuff. But for some reason, when the actual diagnosis came in, as in I got it, I felt like I was like, I need more answers, because it's almost like, there we go, over to you.
Yeah.
And that in itself, because I was on a journey of kind of understanding how I want to see the world, but I for me personally, it's different for everyone else. I started kind of reminiscing and getting flashbacks of all the times, get quite emotional about it, all the times that I didn't get like the promotion, or I was isolated in school, or the teacher didn't actually do anything to help, or that boss was not very, very supportive in any way, shape, or form. And when I say the flashback, they actually felt so real. Like I'll give you an example. One of the processes to get to regional manager or store manager, whatever it was at the time, right? We were sent to Birmingham. There was 11 of us, and we were all sent there for 3 days. Okay, so it was a 3-day assessment. Now, it was a full-on assessment from 8 in the morning till 5 at night. Okay, now you would just be sort of ushered into this room, and they would give you tests to do. So the first hour and a half or 2 hours was to write a business plan, and then you'd be taken from that business plan to then start doing something else. I don't know, working out what it'd be giving you a scenario in a store, and then you'd work out how to staff it, how to do all these different scenarios. Then you'd be taken from that to then another one, and then another one. Okay, so there was 4 actual things. While that was going on, you were then taken out of one, so you're on the 4th one now to be interviewed on the first one that you've done. Okay, right. So, and then you would then come out, start on the 5th one, and then be interviewed on the 2nd one of what you've done. That happened 3 days. Now, this was all with undiagnosed dyslexia. Now, I literally, the third day, I remember they were going around the room, and you had to do a 20-minute talk in front of everyone and discuss something. I kid you not, Donna, I could not speak. I was nonverbal. I was so tired. And we had an assessor. We didn't know who was assessing, but they were with us all the time. It's a bit like The Apprentice. Someone was just watching over us all the time. And in the back, and I always remember that that this lady that was assessing me, because I couldn't speak, I physically couldn't speak. I just said, you know, because I literally burnt out. I just remember her sort of putting her pen down on the side and leaning back. I had to sit there another 4.5 hours after that while that was going on, and literally nonverbal. Those moments when I got the diagnosis were a flashback to that, a flashback of I felt that, you know, the eyes peering on me, the moment of shame that I felt, and that was a lot of it, shame. Then as I started to kind of understand like myself and go on that journey of understanding how dyslexia, you know, neurodivergent it is with everyone else, I started to rebuild myself. Now, I'm not going to tell you now that I'm completely rebuilt in any way, shape, or form, but I have a better understanding of what my coping mechanisms are, and that, you know, the school wasn't my fault. The jobs that I was in and the structures weren't my fault. I play a part in all of these things, and I own that. I completely see that, but I cannot help the way that things were set up. But at the age of 49 now, I can still say that you still get these moments when you look back on something and you think, oh, you know, it's still ingrained in you. So I think with regards to kind of whether you get diagnosed or you don't get diagnosed, or you know, that moment and that period for me wasn't this jubilant moment and I thought everything was great. It was a long period and quite an intense year, I'd say. And then it was, it doesn't ever go away. Yeah. I hope that answers the question.
It really does, and again, so eloquently and honestly. And I think that's what makes you so special, Darren, because you speak so openly about your own experience, which really resonates with people. And I think especially men as well, because a lot of men don't like to speak in these ways. So thank you for always blazing a trail in your honesty and your openness. It's really appreciated. I'm wondering then, again, you know, listening to you talk in these ways, the work that you do now, and you were talking about, you know, going across the world and making these connections and raising awareness as well. How much of that has been that you don't want anyone else to go through what you've been through? It is part of that journey, you trying to make the changes so that nobody else goes through that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Again, another wonderful question, and yeah, absolutely right. The feeling that I went through, that I still go through, that I see, is heartbreaking. And the to allow someone to go through that is just, you just don't want them to. You just really don't want to. And I think it's a driving point. And I think that's why I wanted to kind of, I've whether it's the business mind or whatever it was, I'm kind of rational in the sense of breaking things down, and that's how I've kind of lived my life. And so I thought to myself, Nick, how can I help and how can I serve? And I thought the first thing I want to do is kind of go in the educational sector. I wanted to kind of just give back, just help, just whatever. And I think if people listen to this, like they presume that you have, you know, like if successful people or whatever they're doing or wherever they look at, they presume that they have everything worked out or they have all the answers and everything else. I live my life by just asking questions, by almost just going, like, playing the part where I'm kind of like, I don't know how I can help, but how can I help? Or what do you need? And just listening. And within that listening, it's amazing. You can then kind of think, well, okay, I can help in this way. And sometimes it starts off in a tiny little bit, and then it grows. So if we took the educational sector, I guess, and I'm sorry I call it sector, but that's kind of the way that my mind works, is if I could do one, if I could help one student, if I could just talk to one student, whether they like, they take it on or not, then I feel like I'm helping. I'm speaking to that younger Darren within that side of it. So, and a lot of the stuff I've done, and I've been so scared doing it. First of all, like my comfort zone, I can't stay in it, and it's a chicken and the egg sometimes, because it scares me sometimes, but it's a reward at the end of the day. So when I thought to myself, I want to go in and speak to the kids in school to see about business, entrepreneurship, and dyslexia and stuff like this, I actually went to my old school as the very, very first school that I'd ever do the talk. Now, I've got to give you understanding of, I've given you the story, but the feeling of when I left that school and I walked out of those gates was traumatic. Like, it was exciting because I was going on to something else, but it was scary. Like, all my friends knew that they were going to go to college and they were going to go and get a job or apprenticeship and everything else. I had nothing. Like, there was no direction in way, shape, or form. Now, when I thought I wanted to go back in and help, I contacted my old school and I said, look, again, like with the email, said, I don't know how I can help, but do you do school talks? And this was back, 18 years ago. I don't know when it was. It was a long time ago. Before now, we do a lot of school talks now, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing. And they said, yeah, you can come in and speak to, we've got a couple of students that you can speak to. And I said, yeah, that's fine. I'll come in. And I didn't plan anything. And I always remember walking through those gates and I felt like that child again. I felt so small. And so I remember sort of just crouching, just walking through those gates and going to reception and saying my name, and just like the headmaster came out and felt like I was in trouble. And this is where the scary part came in, because but the most rewarding after is that he then started putting a mic on me. And I said, my goodness, how far away are these children? It's a secondary school. And they said, no, we decided we're going to ask you if you can do a school assembly. And my mouth just dropped. And I said, let's do this. But my heart was just beating, like absolutely beating. And I went up and I did a talk, and, 250 children or something like that. And I thought, okay, this is now, I can now do this more. And that's when I started working with schools and youth clubs, and and spoken to just over 1 million students now, which it's been phenomenal. What drives me is that fear that someone is sat in a porta cabin or isolated in a school, like feeling completely dejected. Like, it breaks your heart, because that period of time, like 5 years of complete isolation, is what drives me every day. To do that. And we haven't even got into the workplace and the other bits and pieces, but when I look back on those moments, it just brings a lump to my throat, because I just think to myself that, like, why and how can that happen?
Again, it's so powerful listening to you talk. And for, I think, a lot of adults, they've got those children within them who've had those awful experiences. And I don't want to talk too much around it, down, because I know it's really emotive and I don't want to trigger and so on. And I want to talk from the inspiration of that into what you do, because you've started to talk about what you do, going into schools, traveling the world and so on. You are an entrepreneur, so you're a business person. But before we do move on, just a quick question. Do you think it was your entrepreneurial brain, your spirit, that got you to where you are now? Was that the magic ingredient that you think it was? We don't use that word superpower anymore, do we? But a gift, a talent. Was it that entrepreneurial way of thinking that you've got? As you look backwards over your life trajectory, was that the ingredient, you think, that got you to where you are now?
Yeah, great question. And again, I can talk from personal experience, but I would definitely say it was.
Yeah.
You see, and this is the thing, because throughout the whole of my school, I never missed a single lesson. Like, never missed a single lesson. Like, I was just always in.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I was always optimistic that something would change. Okay. So when I was in the classroom and I was doing dot to dot and coloring in, I was talking about, I was envisioning business plans. I was writing things. I was doing stuff. I was creating businesses. I was doing like plays, you know, within the thing, you know, like a one boy show, you know, these different things. And when I got home, I could be creative. I could, you know, I had little kind of sideline little businesses going ever since I was kind of like like 8 years old or something else like this. So that mindset, because I always feel like if I was isolated within those environments and I didn't have that mindset of being optimistic and, you know, there's growth and I can do this and I'm seeing, you know, all of these different things that I can do, I don't know how I would have got through those periods of time, because they were tough and they were quite dark within that side of it. And I didn't realize how dark those periods of time were within those side of it. But I genuinely think that optimism, I don't know where I get it. I genuinely don't, but I am generally optimistic about things, and I always think to myself, there is an opportunity in anything within this side of it. But I was always intrigued. I was always intrigued to listen to people and understand where they're coming from. Like, why is this substitute teacher sat there and they're not wanting to do anything but just kind of just sit there? I mean, this was before phones, so they would just come in with this big book and they would read the book throughout the entire lesson. And I was always intrigued, like asking questions like, what's in the book? What's the characters? What's this? And I think that keeping my mind active all those times really kind of helped. And I think once I was able to kind of not have the boundaries and the restrictions in the school and then go out into the working world, but there are, again, massive restrictions in some aspects, I was suddenly able to kind of like, but then what I didn't realize is that you suppress a lot of these things as you then move on to the next thing, because you don't understand how. You just think, oh, okay, that was school, that was horrific, I can now move on to the workplace, I can now move on to this, I can start that business, I can do this. But I think trying to understand, and you know, what leads to burnout was when I got to a certain level. And this is the other thing as well, that when I was climbing the ladder, or whatever the terminology it is for that side of it, there were areas within the job that I was struggling with, okay, because I just couldn't do some of the bits and pieces. So I didn't realize that I was probably one of the, and this is from a dyslexic point of view, and I'm speaking for myself, we are like the best at outsourcing, and we don't realize that we outsource, and we don't do it in any way, shape or form, in any way of like being lazy or anything, but we're just great. It's just saying, look, we see the strengths in someone, say, look, can you help and support this? And I'll help with that side of it. And that's what I've done throughout my entire life. So when I was in the corporate sector and I was climbing the ladder, so to speak, I didn't realize how many times I was outsourcing to people. But in my head, I don't know what it was, I thought if I get the next role, it might be easier. And that was my driving force. But the trouble is, once I got the next role, it was bigger and it was harder. It was more to outsource, more to deal with. But I was always kind of working up. And I think that's where it got to a point where I was kind of burnt out. And I thought I depleted everything I had within me to do that side of it. But that mindset of opportunities, and, you know, if you like, I genuinely think, without being kind of like, the world's an incredible place. I genuinely believe, and there's some incredible people out there. And I think the community is phenomenal. And I think just by reaching out and having conversations, literally, you know, from a guy who can just send out some emails and then suddenly get on a flight, you know, yes, it was self-funded. Everything was self-funded. You know, I didn't want from anyone. All I wanted was their time and to see if I can help. But what, you know, it just shows that what an opportunity you can create by just having that in your mindset and trying to put things out.
And that is infectious about you, that the love of people, wanting to make a difference. That's why I think you're so well thought of and well regarded in our community, because it just, as I said, it shines through. And I can vouch for this, as you are right now is who you are behind the scenes, because, you know, you were my boss for 2 years, Darren, at Succeed with Dyslexia. So this is you, and that's what's so wonderful, because you are the real deal. You are how you present, and genuinely trying to make a difference. Talk to me then. I mean, there's so much I want to ask you, but I've got one eye on the time, so we might have to do a part 2 sometime, because there's lots I want to ask you. No, it's honestly, it is amazing. Tell me about your projects then, because you are ambassador, you're a lot of, you're in these quite senior roles now where you are speaking for the community and so on. But you've not forgot the grassroots as well, which is again so very special. But tell me about some of the work that you're doing. Obviously neurodiversity stories, but lots of other things as well, especially for someone like me. I follow you on media. I see all the great work you're doing. Unpack some of it for us. Love to hear more.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah, I created Neurodiversity Stories in COVID actually, and it was just again an opportunity to absorb and speak to people. So that became, I guess it kind of sort of blew up into an incredible thing. And I think I had to date around 23,500 people contact me about coming onto stories, but then that became because it was literally just me. Neurodiversity is just. It's just me. There's the secret. There's like Wizard of Oz. I pulled back the cloak because and I created all the other bits and pieces. But that was that's an amazing thing. And we I put that out to help, I guess, give people a voice that I felt that I'd lost back in those times. It was quite ironic. I said about how I lost my voice in corporate, and then I kind of for me, it's just trying to understand how I best and I can serve. And I'm in a very wonderful opportunity, and whether it's because of the work that I do and what we put out is that organizations, I've worked with some really big organizations, like PepsiCo and Nike and Netflix and these things. And then I've worked with the real kind of small micro business, and then the kind of the young and the small kind of entrepreneurs within that side of it. And it's more kind of on a consultancy side of it. What I learned quite, and this was quite an eye-opener for me, and is that we get dyslexia awareness. I'm never too sure whether it's Dyslexia Awareness Week or month, okay?
Yeah,
but I just know between October and November it's dyslexia every day. But I always remember, and when we work together, we had this kind of time where it was a big time for organizations to get involved, wasn't it? And say, can you come and speak, and can you come and do these things? And what I learned by speaking to these organizations was I almost stopped myself from just going in and just doing one talk. And I was not inundated, but I was contacted by quite a lot of organizations, and I won't name the companies, but they were saying, can you come in and just do a talk? And I was like, just do a talk, that's fine. So, and I know when we worked together, the amazing stuff with the training and everything else, what it learned, while working with yourself as well, is that there's so many layers. Okay. And I felt that if I was just going to go in and just do a talk and then leave, where is the structure? Where is the foundations for it? Where is the, what happens when, Tom or Margaret gets up after that talk the next day and goes into HR and says, okay, I hear Darren speak. I've dyslexia. What are you going to do to help and support? And they don't know. So that was where I kind of then started an agreement, I guess, of if you want me to talk, that's fine. However, I would need you to commit to this, and this. And I think some companies were on board with it, and other companies probably saw it as an upsell, within that side of it. But it was really key for my self-awareness and morals, I guess, to understand that I'm going to try and do the best I can for these organizations to be able to help. The other side of that side of it is that I do a lot of work in a lot of different countries. There is a tremendous amount of work that I do kind of behind the scenes, which I can't share purely because of NDAs and bits and pieces. But what I will say is there is a phenomenal amount of organizations and charities and entrepreneurs and people. And I think we're in a period of time now where they need more support than ever, to help. And I think we're very blessed within the UK because we do have some amazing organizations that the ones that you're is affiliated with this. And I think that in itself is a tremendous thing to help and support people, because when we talk about community, what you can't, the amazing training that you do, like, you can't do it all, and I can't do it all, and one charity can't do it all. And I think that coming together sometimes doesn't always align as well as it could do. I guess. I think because we have a mixture, and sometimes we have a mixture between the charities, we have business, and then lots of different businesses, and you know, some of them do some incredible stuff as well as that. So I think with regards to kind of the projects and stuff like this, I've learned how I can best serve and best support. And if they're looking for someone to just come in and do a 30 minutes talk or something else like that, it's not for me, because I don't feel that I can add those values. But there's a lot of stuff overseas, but I'm very keen and interested of still, as you mentioned, that grassroots side of it, because I wish back in the day that a couple of things for me. I wish that we had someone come into our school and do a school talk on entrepreneurship or dyslexia. That would have been amazing. And I wish that the organizations that I worked with in the past would have shared the same thing of bringing people in like yourself or like me or like, you know, other people to start talking about these things. So I think because those things didn't happen, it's more of a drive now to want to do those things because I didn't have those things. And this is where it joins within the educational sector, because I didn't have that in the educational sector. I didn't have that in the workplace. So I think to myself, like, how can we formulate these things to be able to help and support? And as you know, you can't just work with an organization on one time. It has to be a continuous. Things evolve, things change, things happen, and people need more support than just one touch point. So that's kind of where I am at the moment. I hope that answered the question.
It answered it perfectly, because you're as busy as always, making a difference as you always do. As we draw the conversation to a close then, again, and you've been so honest about, people will look to you, Darren, and I know because people have said this to me, things you've posted up, and people are absolutely lost in admiration because you've been so honest about what your backstory is and who you've become. People are like, wow, look where Darren's got to, and it's truly inspirational. And so a lot of us look to think, okay, what's your, in quotes, secret? What is it we can do if we want to try and be our best selves? And if possible, and I know that's a big question, in a nutshell, for those listening, adults who, this is your story is very much their story as well. Any words of wisdom about what we can do now as we look to next year, 2026, to be our best selves, to get to that good place?
Absolutely. I think it just comes down to believing in yourself and having that confidence. And although I feel, there's days when I'm not 100% confident, okay, and we haven't even touched on masking and bits and pieces, but generally, what I would say is turning up as your best self within whatever you do, whatever you're doing, regardless of whatever you're doing, is a massive helps with the mindset. The biggest thing for me has been surrounding myself with like-minded people and incredible people. Now, this doesn't mean, like, you could be in a workplace and you can think to yourself, we're not clicking, or this, but it could be a community group. It could be listening to this incredible, discussions that you have on these things. It could be a podcast. It's aligning yourself with people that, I'm not saying necessarily that you aspire to be, but almost in the sense of thinking, like. And the other thing as well, as I would say, is having a plan, okay, of having, it could be the smallest, tiniest little plan that you want to do. And really quickly, so I live my life by the ABCD rule, okay? Now, this is something that when I was just starting out in management, a manager gave this to me and it was brilliant. And I'll really just quickly abbreviate this. Every day, I write down, well, I do it weekly now, but every day before I would write down A, B, C, D, and A was for achievement, B was benefit, and C was concern, and D was do next, okay? Now, every single day back then, I would write down one achievement that I did, okay? And then I would say, what was the benefit of that achievement, okay? And that would think, we finish days and we think, I didn't do anything today, all these things, right? There's always something, one thing. Could have been you ate correctly. Could have been you went for a walk. Could have been you spoke to someone. You picked up the phone. You text someone. The benefit of that. Now, this is where the planning and the do next comes from. Your concerns, where you worry so much, because we're always in our minds, is what are your concerns? And you don't have to write down the whole concerns. But if you wrote down a couple of concerns, and the D is the do next. The do next, what are you going to do about those concerns? If you're concerned about something, speak to someone. And what you've got collectively within the ABCD rule is you've got your achievements, you've done something that's benefited that, and your concerns, you've written them down and you're planning around those things. Now that ABCD, I had books of those and that's what helped me grow a retail career, because when I was put into an interview to go up to the next stage, some of the key questions they ask you is, okay, tell me about turnover. What have you done to achieve this store? What have you done to have done da, 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 da. And then you've got it straight away. I've achieved this, achieved this, achieved this. What are your concerns? My concerns were this. What did you do about them? You're a problem solver.
Yeah.
I lived with that for years and years and years. And it's such a little exercise that helps. So you can
No, it's a brilliant one. I've not even heard of it. I love it. And I love that as well. What you're going to do next, the D. What you're going to do next. That's great to motivate her to kind of the next day, the next week.
Yeah,
or
and if you don't do it, then you just carry it over. You just carry it over. You don't have, there's no pressure. It's your list. But it enables you to just put these things down. So
yeah, brilliant. Well, we're going to be really keen to see what you're going to do next, Darren, into next year, because my goodness, you're a superstar. We were so chuffed that you were going to speak to us. So thank you for giving of yourself so generously. You are always so honest, open. You, as I said, you are a great role model where you're talking about your areas of struggle so openly. That it makes it feel okay for us to feel that way. And then of course you're so inspirational with all your great strengths and achievements, the achievements. So thank you. I can't say thank you enough. What a great conversation, and more power to you. On the back of that, then the time has just whizzed. I am then going to share the contact details. Darren talked about the fact of community, and ANND is a little community that we join together. So let me share. This is always the bit for our regular listeners that I get very nervous about, because it's the techie side, as I try and share the contact details for our coalition. As it's just thinking about it, let me move it forward. There we go. Hopefully you can see those okay, everybody. We heard from Sue this evening. She was with us from the Adult Dyslexia Centre. There is their helpline contact details. Yorkshire Rose, if you're in that part of the world, they are their helpline details as well. They're there for you. Hampshire, they don't have a telephone number, but they've got an email address as part of their support system. And you're in Nottingham, the Dyslexia Association, and for regular listeners, you'll know we often have lovely Kay with us, the CEO there. They ask you to drop them an email, and then they will give you a call back, and there is their helpline at email address. Succeed with Dyslexia, and we've talked a little bit about Darren and I's ventures there. Don't have a helpline in that way, but they've got lots of great information, YouTube videos. You'll probably see Darren on a lot of them. You might see me on a couple of them. So yeah, lots of great free resources. Box, training, assessment, support with assistive technology, access to work. Please do reach out to the team there. There's a lot of very skilled caring professionals ready to support. And last but certainly not least is Helen Arkell Dyslexia Charity. Again, some great work, lots of free resources there to support families in the ways that Darren's talked this evening, that, you know, as a child growing up, an organisation like Helen Arkell would have been a great support for him and his family, as would the British Dyslexia Association. He's kind of come full circle now, because obviously he supports these organisations to make a difference. Darren, I just want to say again, a huge thank you. Are you happy for folks who are listening to this to reach out to you on LinkedIn and so on?
Most certainly, yeah. That's the best place to find me, Darren Clark. I've got a little globe next to my name, next is Clark. Please feel free. Yeah, I'd love to connect.
Yeah, thank you so much. And guys, listen to Neurodiversity Stories. It is exceptional. That just leaves me to say a huge thank you to you as our listeners. Thank you always for showing up and listening. And please do reach out. Please know that you're not alone. Darren's talked about community a lot tonight, and knowing that you're not on your own. And these organisations are here for you. Okay, so until next time, it's been lovely to have your company. Take care, everyone, and we'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye. Darren, we've stopped.